So, we all know the world's population is ageing. I think that's something that it's now given. We all know that this is happening. It's really what we're going to do about it. But there are a lot of... we talk about population ageing, but actually what exactly is it? So it really refers to the increase in the number and the proportion of older people that are in our population. I mean, obviously your definition of what makes up an older person is something different, which I'll get onto earlier. But it really means we're talking about a rise from a time of high fertility and high mortality to one of low fertility and relatively high mortality. And what that means is the changing distribution of different age groups within our population. So as I said, the world's population is ageing and Northern Ireland is no different from that. It may be happening at a different timescale from other regions just because of our historic demographic distribution, but our population is getting older. So I've presented here some figures from 2013 for our Northern Ireland population, and you can see that the number of people aged 0 to 15 years was about 382,000, and the numbers who are aged 65 or older was less than that. And I thought the clicker wasn't going to work. If we look 20 years on, we can see that actually the number of people, children, aged 0 to 15 years is actually likely to fall, but the number aged 65 or older is going to be much larger. So there's the pointer. So you can actually see that the number of children will be less than the number aged 65 or more, and the numbers aged 84 or more by 2033 is likely to be about 79,000. If we look what that means in terms of population, in terms of percentages, the proportion of the population who are children will decrease. The proportion of what has traditionally been termed working age, which is 16 to 64, though obviously that definition actually doesn't make sense anymore, will fall. But there will be a rise of 138% in the proportion aged 84 or over. So that's going to have huge implications, positive or negative, for our population, and it's really up to us as to how we adapt to that. Within demographics, we often talk about a dependency ratio, where it's when you look at the proportion of the working age population to the proportion of children and older people. So it's quite important that we think that we look at the number of children that we have in our population that are going to be going forward to be working and paying taxes to support other populations. By 2027, that is going to be a big year for us, and we find that the number of children aged under 16 will be less than the number of adults aged 65 or older. So that's going to mark a big changing point within Northern Ireland's population. So it's within this context that we have asked questions within the Life and Time survey on ageing and ageism. We asked these questions before in 2003, we asked them again in 2008, and we thought it was very timely to ask them again in 2014. So I'm going to present the findings from the 2014 module, and where possible I'll give comparisons between 2003 and 2008 as well. But since we asked the questions in 2008, there have been quite a few policy changes and legislative changes within Northern Ireland. One of these is the establishment of the post of the Commissioner for Older People in Northern Ireland. That's why we're very pleased to have Claire Keating with us today. Claire came into post in 2011, but I'll not say anything more about what she does because she can say that a lot more eloquently than I can. We also have had a draft active ageing strategy from 2014 to 20, and I know there's people in the room who have been working on that. And that has been based on the UN principles for older persons. And of these 18 principles, we can group those into 5 domains of independence, participation, care, self-fulfilment and dignity. So those are kind of the overarching ideas that we want for our population of older people within Northern Ireland. We could also say that actually those are the ideas we want for all of our population as well. So it's something to aim for and something to examine to see if we are actually providing that for our population. Also, the idea of being age-friendly has come to the fore since 2008, and I know that Belfast is working within that process of becoming age-friendly, as well as other towns and regions in Northern Ireland. Being Age Friendly is a global initiative, and it's about enabling people of all ages to participate in community activities and to be active citizens within their world. Of course, there's a lot of challenges to that. Some of those are infrastructural, so it's about transport, it's about housing, it's about how our public spaces are set up to encourage people to participate in them. But there's also something about attitudes. There's a lot of challenges about how we think about ageing and how much we value people of all ages participating within our communities. So within that context, I think we designed questions within the module to reflect how some of the active ageing principles, how some of the age-friendly principles were being enacted within Northern Ireland. Of course, what age is old? With changing demographics, what is old 30 years ago, we wouldn't like to think, or probably don't think of being old now. So within the Life and Time survey, we asked respondents, at what age do you start to think of someone as an older person? And the responses were very much linked to the age of the actual respondents. The responses ranged from 30 to 100. And on this graph, I have, for each of the 6 age groups, I have shown the minimum age that respondents gave, the maximum age, and the mean score. So if we can look at the age of 30 was given by somebody aged 18 to 24, and you can see that this increases with age. If we look at the mean score, we can see that it was about 62 years old for those aged 18 to 24. And then when we look at respondents who are aged 65 or over, their mean score that they thought of somebody as being an older person had risen to 72. So there is very much a perception of older. It changes depending on how old the actual respondent is. We then asked about respect, again, one of the key principles within our active ageing strategy. And we asked respondents, do you think that older people are, on the whole, treated better or worse than people in the population in this country because of their age? And you can see here, about 22% of people said better. So that's about 1 in 5 of our population. And that seems quite small, but it actually is twice the population from 2003, when only 11% said that. And again, there was an association with age. And those in the middle ages of about 45 to 54 were the group that were more likely to say that older people are treated worse in our population than other ages. So that was about older people and respect in general. We then asked people, as you get older, do you find that people treat you with more respect or with less respect? And the situation has changed a bit since 2003. At that time, about a quarter of people said that yes, they felt they were treated with more respect as they got older. By 2014, this had risen to 37%. So hopefully that's some kind of feeling that older people are being respected more in our society. But again, the most negative responses were from those who were in the middle age groups, about 45 to 54. And only about 25% of them said that they felt that they got more respect as they got older, compared to about 56% of those aged 18 to 24. And actually those aged 65, about 4 in 10 said that they felt they were treated with more respect as they got older. We also hear a lot these days about solidarity between generations, a lot of intergenerational work and feelings of solidarity between older people and young people. So we asked several questions to try and tap into that idea of intergenerational solidarity. First of all, we asked, do you think that older people are respected by young people? And you can see that about just over 1/2 of people agreed in some way with that statement. And we found that younger people, those aged 18 to 24, actually about 70% of them agreed with that. So they felt that older people were respected by young people. But that wasn't quite the same when you asked people of other age groups. And in fact, those aged 65 or over, about 55% said that older people were respected by young people. We also then asked, do you think that older people are stuck in their ways? And we found that about Again, about just over one half of respondents said that they thought that older people were stuck in their ways. And about 60% of people aged 25 to 34 thought this as well. And then we asked, are older people willing to listen to younger people? And again, about one half of respondents felt that as well. So we actually need a bit more time. It's hard to feel if there's intergenerational solidarity, intergenerational ambivalence or conflict across Northern Ireland. We need more time, more research to see how attitudes change as our population gets older. So we've seen that we've got an ageing population. Is this a crisis? Is this an opportunity? It's great that people are living older, but hopefully they are living older in better circumstances. But do we feel that, you know, this is a real crisis? Is it a demographic time bomb? Are there a pensions crisis? Or is this an opportunity because we have older people who are able to contribute a lot to our society? But within our economic context, within the financial crisis since 2008, we found that suddenly population ageing, often viewed as a mixed blessing by Western governments, has somehow assumed much more negative connotations. And Walker said that older people are now being transferred from the safe political haven of being deserving to being radically more exposed position of being one of the major threats to Britain's economic future. So that's really kind of putting a real dread and putting a very negative overtone onto how we think about older people and how we see them very negatively, and a drain on our very constrained resources. And I've just taken this graphic from a report by the Commissioner of Older People, so apologies for lifting that. And I think it gives a very good illustration of the contributions that actually people within Northern Ireland are making to our society. There's a lot of while many people aged 60 or over may not be going out to work, actually quite a lot of them are. They are making financial contributions, they are paying taxes, they are making gifts, they are contributing financially to our society in a lot of ways. But they are also making a lot of other contributions, both as volunteers, providing childcare, taking up positions of responsibility in a whole range of civil society organisations. So while there are costs for this age group, as there are for every other age group, actually this report calculated that the total net contribution between 2012 and 2062 will be about £25 billion. But I will leave Claire to talk about that more eloquently later. So within the Life and Time survey, we asked this a cognate question: does society recognise the contribution that many people are still able to make? Actually, we asked that in a negative way, asking people did they agree or disagree that society doesn't recognise this contribution. And we found that about 3/4 of respondents felt that society doesn't recognise that older people are making a very big contribution in lots of different ways to our society. And while 75% seems very high, it actually is lower than the number of 86, the figure of 86% in 2003. Again, we hear a lot about the pensions crisis with our ageing population. How are we going to pay the state pension and other benefits for this rapidly increasing population? So we've had lots of legislative and policy changes to that, such as the abolition of statutory retirement age in 2011, which is why when we talk about our working age population being aged 16 to 64, that actually doesn't mean anything anymore, because people are having to work until they are older in order to be eligible for statutory retirement, for state pension, because that age is rising. When we asked respondents, do we think that people should be allowed to work as long as they want to and as long as they are able to, we found that 4 in 5 people were quite supportive of that suggestion. And in fact, we found that there was little variation in the age. So young people were as likely to feel that as older age groups as well. We found that about 4 in 10 respondents thought that people in their 60s should give up work to make way for younger people. And we did find slightly more support of that among the older age groups than in the younger age groups. So it's not that younger people are necessarily saying, oh, well, those older workers should give up their jobs so we could have them. In fact, we found that less than 3 in 10 of respondents in the 18 to 24 age group thought that as well. So to get back to the title of our presentation today, is Northern Ireland a place to grow old? Well, in order to kind of evaluate the overarching themes of that, we asked a few questions that tapped into some of the ideas of dignity, self-fulfilment, participation. First of these asked about access to health and social care. And we found that there was a slight majority of respondents, 6 out of 10, felt that older people have equal access to health care. We found that a slight majority, about 56%, felt that older people have good access to social care if they needed it. But we found that actually the group who were more likely to disagree with those statements were those in the middle age groups, about 45 to 54. And we wondered if that was because perhaps that age group is the group that are providing care for, say, older parents, and they are maybe facing some of the difficulties in accessing health and social care. Perhaps some older parents themselves are being protected from the difficulties of accessing care and social care because of the care and support from their younger relatives. We also asked about value, rights and dignity, and again these are some of the principles that are enshrined in the UN Convention on Older People, on the proposed UN Convention. We asked about, are older people valued in our society, are their rights upheld and the dignity of older people upheld? And just about at 1/2 of respondents agreed with those. But the group that were more likely to agree were those aged 75 or older. Again, least likely to agree were those in the 45 to 54 age group. So there's really something going on with that middle age group. So, to sum up, we thought, is Northern Ireland a good place to grow old? We think, well, yes, there has been a lot of really good and positive policy and other changes within our society, such as having a commissioner for older people, the development of the process of aiming towards getting age-friendly status. But whilst we have had a commissioner since 2011, only 28% had heard of the commissioner for older people. That again was associated with age, so only 16% of those aged 18 to 24 had heard of the commissioner for older people. That rose as the age group got older as well. There was the finding that a slight majority of people had the perception that older people had appropriate access to health and social care if they needed it. But when we asked respondents what are the main issues that we want a commissioner or other organisations to look at, while increased pension and financial support was there was also a feeling that people wanted the commissioner to look at better care for older people in their homes and care homes, and also to improve healthcare and access to healthcare. So while some people say yes, there is relevant and appropriate access, actually there is a feeling that we could do a lot better on that. So our report card on how good Northern Ireland is to be old. Some steps have been taken and those are very positive, but there still is a way to go. And one thing, as I say, I've highlighted, why is there dissatisfaction among those in the middle age groups? Is it because these people are accessing services on behalf of older parents, or perhaps they're just reflecting on their own life and their own stage in life and thinking about how things will be in the next few years for them as well? One important note to make is the policy change must keep up with the demographic change, and we need to adapt our policies and our services and our legislation to reflect what is happening within our society. So while lots of good things have happened, we do feel as a society, both in terms of attitudes and policy, Northern Ireland must try harder. Thank you. Thank you very much.